With Christmas approaching, a trip to the Ludlow medieval fair promised to be a pleasant day out, especially as we were to travel there in restored 1950s coaches hauled by Tornado. This A1 class locomotive was built from scratch and came into service in 2008, 42 years after all the others in its class were scrapped. There are shorter, quicker ways to Ludlow from Paddington, but for the railway buff, life is about the journey and not the arriving. If the truth be known, the Ludlow Fair provided an excuse for the steam enthusiasts to indulge in their favourite pastime. As a result, the route ran from Paddington to Maidenhead, and then on to Reading, up to Didcot, from there down to Swindon, and along to Bristol Parkway, under the Severn to Newport, and then from there it went up through the Welsh Marches to Hereford, and then on to Ludlow. Conveniently for us, Maidenhead was a boarding point for the trip, and as the train approached, we waited by the bronze of local resident Sir Nicholas Winton, the British Schindler who rescued 669 Czechoslovakian children from the Nazis just prior to World War II. After boarding, and with a watery sun rising behind the trackside trees, there was a short ride to Reading where we picked up more passengers. On our way again, we gathered speed for a fast run on the Great Western Main Line to Bristol. Here, Tornado took on water before carrying on to Newport, where our progress slowed while we negotiated the sharp curves and complications of changing to the Welsh Marches line. Up to speed again, we sat back and enjoyed the sight of the passing scenery until we stopped for a while to wait until the track ahead was clear for Tornado and 12 fully laden coaches to have a non-stop climb to Abergavenny. After this we continued without further hold-ups through the Welsh countryside to Hereford and then on to our destination Ludlow. Having arrived at Ludlow, we negotiated the narrow streets with visitors like us, packed shoulder to shoulder, all on their way to the castle and the fair. Entrance with a prepaid ticket was simple and quick, and we set about exploring the marquees and stands to see what diversions were on offer. In medieval times, on saints' days and holy days, such as Christmas and Easter, fairs would be held within the castle walls, and both nobles and peasants alike would enjoy feasting and festivities. Merchants from far and wide would come to buy and sell their goods, and varied entertainments such as music, drama, minstrels, acrobats and their like were there to be enjoyed by all, and the Ludlow Christmas Fair seeks to recreate in part the atmosphere of one of these past occasions. The castle, which lends itself to this kind of event, was built along with others in the late 11th century to defend the earldom of Hereford from Welsh invaders. Abandoned in 1689, it quickly fell into ruin, but since 1811 it has been owned by the Earls of Paris, who saved it from further decay and eventually opened it to the public. In order to defend one's castle, it is necessary to have a force of skilled archers, and skills with a bow and arrow are best learned at a very early age. As can be seen, starting young leads not just to accuracy, but to style as well. After a blustery but enjoyable visit, the time has now come for us to go. Leaving this young serf to clear up the medieval mess, we join the throng back to the station and pass as we go the great cannon, which for one day at least failed to prevent a massed invasion of Ludlow Castle. Back at the station, both platforms were crowded with visitors to the fair, awaiting trains to take them home. Their ranks were considerably increased by a large number of spectators who'd come to see the King Edward I, which, engaged in a similar excursion to ours, was returning to Exeter. A short while later, another train, this time headed by a vintage diesel engine, stopped to pick up passengers bound from Manchester via Birmingham. When they left, with their evening meal about to be served, all vantage points were taken up by dozens of steam enthusiasts who had stayed on in the biting wind to see Tornado. Unfortunately, it was delayed by almost an hour. It had spent the afternoon in a siding at Shrewsbury, but was unable to get back on the main line as the railway employee responsible for operating the points failed to turn up. Back on board in the welcome warmth of the carriage, a festive atmosphere prevailed, and by way of an apology, Network Rail arranged for us to have an uninterrupted return journey. Once again we stopped at Bristol to take on water, and had an opportunity to have a closer look at Tornado. Quite a few people were having their photo taken by this great loco, but I decided to have a quick peep inside the cab. Unfortunately, this did not extend to actually getting on the footplate. Then it was back to our seats for a non-stop run to Reading and Maidenhead, where we arrived just 15 minutes later than scheduled. He's on his way. While some of our fellow passengers and a few hardy photographers left the platform, we stood and watched as Tornado disappeared into the night.